Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us at the ever-improving No Soundbites Allowed podcast. My name is Michael Vasquez. We thank you for joining us in this adventure of describing the politics that go on in our nation on a personal and local level as often as possible, giving you, the audience, more than just 30 seconds to understand what's going on in our nation. We look forward to joining you as we go. Just sit back, enjoy the ride. Please remember, if you like the episodes, like it, share it, let other people know, and if you can, please donate, even if it's $2, even if it's $5, because it all makes a difference. We thank you, and here we go. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me back. That's right, this is Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, here with you at the No Soundbites Allowed podcast. I'm having a great day. It's been a great week, and we're going to talk a lot about that. And most importantly, I want to let everyone know that we have a great member with us here today. We have Dom Costantino. And I know, it's, you know what? We were practicing your last name like 15 times, and I just screwed it up again.
Story of my life.
And the sad thing is I had it right, and now I say it, and I screwed it up. But Dom is a good friend of mine. He's a fantastic guy, and we've been talking on and off air, about all the issues that affect everybody around here. And we kept saying, we just got to get together. We got to get together and actually do this and get on the show and talk with everyone. So I definitely am going to take that opportunity here now. But first, I want to thank everyone, of course, for the time that you are here. The fact that you come in, you join us, you listen in every week. You guys make it all worthwhile because we're talking about important things, but you make the difference. Now, Dom, say hi.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm always happy to have people in on the show, and we enjoy it. Actually turn out to be some of the best programs I do. And I know we have a lot to talk about, and you're very familiar with a lot of stuff. But Dom, before I do that, tell people about yourself.
All right. So born and raised in Binghamton, New York, 33 years old. Work in HVAC equipment sales, bartend on the side, do a little side gig there. Pretty into right-leaning libertarian politics.
Yeah, I'd say you're
So
more
kind of
libertarian.
there.
Yeah.
A lot of, kind of feel a lot of different issues. So I think that's something we can flesh out here. I would say not everything that I believe in and everything that I hold true to myself is totally along party lines with any individual, any single party. And that's, to me, that's like the most important part about anything. If we're going to talk politics, if we're going to talk social issues, the individual and individual freedoms and beliefs, that's paramount.
Oh, absolutely. And it's always, the best thing is always having your own viewpoint, the way that you look at it, how you think of it, because politics at the end of the day is individual. It's
Absolutely.
what we individually believe. No party's 100%. No person is 100%. We're always going to see, or we should see something wrong with some part of it. It's what's mostly right in the various parties, the various individuals out there, and make the best choice based on that.
Absolutely. And what Western values are predicated on the value of the individual.
Yeah.
That's what everything comes down to with my beliefs.
That is the freedom to fail, the freedom to get it right, the freedom to just have an opinion and to share it with people, whether they agree or not, because that's important. And actually, this kind of goes into one of the first things that we want to talk about is freedom of speech. The First Amendment and the freedom of speech clause that says, hey, we can talk about anything that we want to. We can share it with people, and they have the right to listen or not listen or disagree or comment. But that's something that we have as a right. Most countries don't have. And I think it's vital. It's one of the most important things out there besides the Second Amendment. It's one of the most important freedoms that we have that makes our country so great.
Yeah.
And I know we've had some conversations about it, but what do you think of the First Amendment?
First Amendment. Well, I think a cool idea to flesh out with that. What would be when you see First Amendment rights, maybe not even if you're talking First Amendment, when you see somebody's freedom to speak or just their speech in general canceled out by what's commonly referred to as like a heckler's veto. So perfect example would be the kind of things you see on campuses right now.
Right.
Or, you see a lot of media figures might come out in support of a conservative figure or conservative idea, and they're forced to shut down, from a Twitter mob or something of that nature.
Yeah. So like not Ben Carson, Ben Shapiro, when he shows up or he's going to be speaking at an event, and then, or even Jordan Peterson, where you have all the protesters, they barge into the event and try and keep protesting long enough to shut it down, or they start attacking either on Facebook or Twitter, trying to scare people from being able to go to the event. And in both cases, they basically shut down the opportunity for someone to have a conversation who wants to be there or has a question about it, or even to challenge it.
Absolutely. And that's where I think it'd be a cool idea to flesh out, because at the same time, and as much as I don't support anything like that, that speech isn't being canceled by your government.
True. It's not being canceled by the government, but it is, from what I've seen recently, and I did a speech on Monday over at SUNY Broome College, and I was speaking about the First Amendment. And we've seen a lot of people doing stuff that is, well, not prohibited by government, but definitely encouraged a whole lot. So I'll give you the example. There's Facebook. While they're a private company, they profess to be very free speech, and you can do anything unless you break certain guidelines they have. And basically, almost everybody that they're censoring hasn't broken a single one of the guidelines. I've experienced that. Alex Jones has experienced that. Diamond and Silk have experienced it. And yet we're seeing these companies do that. And I think that's really wrong. Yeah.
No, and absolutely. And that's a topic to look at. And I think that's something we could dive into here, man. So my thoughts on this, it's as much as I like to stay, I want to stay kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of integral with my points. I want to stay consistent with my beliefs.
Right.
So maybe it isn't the government canceling your free speech. But at the same time, you're looking at speech getting destroyed by heckler's veto, or by, a private company that's going to use a subjective term like hate speech to cancel
I hate that
speech. Yeah, and it's way too subjective. And even, there's people out there who legitimately argue that hate speech shouldn't be protected.
Well, here's a good question. What's hate speech?
Exactly. And what you get if you were going to have your government define that, you're most likely going to get a group of unelected bureaucrats deciding what is and isn't hate speech. You're going to get the last people in the world you want deciding what is hate speech to decide what's hate speech. And that's exactly what you get with these with Twitter, with Facebook, with YouTube. You have these companies are, you have a group of people running these companies that are all within probably 100 miles of San Francisco,
Not even, right? In Silicon Valley.
Yeah, and it'd be, and that's, regardless, I definitely have like a right bias, but I mean, you'd see that same, if you had those same companies in super far right, kind of more red, in the middle of a red state, they'd be probably, you might get censoring of liberal speech, right? So I think that's a major concern, because those companies there's not really options there. You don't have to be on social media, but at the same time, if you're on social media,
nowadays
it's Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. You really have like 4 options for all those. And you see those 3 big ones, especially YouTube is really the only place that you can stream videos.
For the most part.
That people are going to consistently watch it.
Yeah, there are, not to say that there's Vimeo and a few others. They do exist, but the real focus of the average person is going to be to there, or say Google or Facebook. I mean, that's where all the real focus is amongst the general public. And I know that with Facebook, we had their founder, Mark Zuckerberg. He admitted when he was speaking to Senator Ted Cruz, and he was being investigated by the Senate hearings. He mentioned how that Silicon Valley itself is very left-leaning. And then we heard from the CEO of Twitter, who also validated that and mentioned that, this is a left-leaning environment in his company and in Silicon Valley. And both of these companies are actively going out there and like with Twitter, a lot of people don't know, on September 9th, he admitted that they created a program, an algorithm that would take 600,000 people who are right or conservative, right-leaning or conservative, and to hide them and minimize their exposure, including elected officials.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they had that running for an unknown number of years until middle of last year, 2017. But they were actively making sure that as few a number of people as possible could be able to see those tweets, including when, elected officials are talking to their constituents. And that drives me nuts. It's like,
absolutely.
oh my God, what is that?
Yeah. It's gross. Honestly, it is. Obviously, you've had private companies trying to influence politics for centuries. I mean, that's always gonna be a thing. I don't really think you can completely eliminate that. But to try to censor public discourse, I think takes that to a whole different level. That's different than just dumping money into a cause or a campaign. I think that takes it to a level where you're trying to make sure that nobody gets to hear these conflicting ideas.
Yeah, I call that compelled speech.
Absolutely.
When you remove the option to have another voice, then you're compelling that one voice, and that's wrong.
Yeah.
And I know that's absolutely illegal for the government to do it, and we have expectations for while a private business is not required per se.
Yeah.
They're held to the same expectation that we should have as much free speech reasonably as when we do it in our private lives. Same protection from the government we should have there. So as an example, no, I agree. I can't just run down the street saying that I don't know, I'm pro-gun.
Yeah.
Everybody should have a gun, and I'm wearing the name of some business, and I'm at their counter. I don't want to see someone at McDonald's telling me about how they're pro-abortion as I'm trying to order a Big Mac, as an example. Not to say that anyone at McDonald's did that, but if they're doing that, I understand that's an abuse, because now you're taking away from that company. In your private life, or on a platform that says, hey, you can speak about whatever you want, just don't be vulgar, don't incite violence, you can say whatever you want to your friends, which is social media, then why are you censoring me?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that really gets me about this, it's like the most infuriating part is that these companies will swear up and down that there isn't a bias there, and this is about censoring hate speech. And again, it's that subjective term, hate speech. I mean, I think it's Hamas has a Twitter page that hasn't been taken down yet. I mean,
Hamas has an active
terrorist
one.
Organization that literally calls for the destruction of the entire Jewish race.
And so
has a Twitter page.
Yeah, they have a Twitter page. Antifa has a Twitter page.
Yeah.
And on Facebook, I know of at least, I stopped counting at 55, but there are 55 active Antifa website pages on Facebook, and they have been identified by the federal government as a domestic terrorist group.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've seen the governor of California, and in several of the cities, including Berkeley, the mayors have said it's a terrorist group and a bunch of thugs. That's a quote. And yet they're perfectly fine to do whatever they want. But I know I've had problems with it. The Sunni Broom Republicans pages have problems with it. I know of that Scott Baker, a legislator. He got censored. He couldn't even post on his legislative. And for people who don't know, that's in Broome County. He's a legislator. And on his official correspondence page with constituents, he was blocked by Facebook. I'm like,
yeah,
what's that about?
Well, and that's a big difference with the right and left. I don't personally know anyone on the right that wouldn't unequivocally denounce any kind of fascist group, neo-Nazis, white power, even the alt-right. And even though that term, again, has become subjective to say anybody you don't like is alt-right, anybody with any conservative values is alt-right. But anybody who's true alt-right, anybody who's a white nationalist, anyone who uses those kind of terms, I don't personally know anybody who considers themselves a conservative or a right-leaning libertarian that won't come right out and completely denounce that, that won't denounce fascism as a whole. Where the left, there's this coddling of far-left communist, anarcho-communist groups like Antifa. Somehow this always gets a free pass, which is, when you see the atrocities committed in the 20th century by fascists and communists, yet the right has no problems admitting when their past was embarrassing.
Yeah, it's weird because you can talk about the right all day long and say how horrible and negative certain groups, which are considered fringe groups and minor fractions of the party overall. Well, they're all talked about, and then on the left, well, no, they're just a little excited. They're they're very boisterous and they're filled with passion. So we should let them talk. Wait a minute, they're trying to burn down buildings and break cars and attack people. What the hell?
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that, but I mean, that's just crazy.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say the curse. That's why. But they slip out sometimes. But I mean, that's a problem, and that's a serious problem. And a great example, Keapernick.
Yep.
Let's talk about Keapernick. There's something that's controversial.
Yeah, and that's such a multifaceted issue that I think people from both sides like to look at it as super black and white. Actually, no pun intended. Super black and white from a racial point, but super black and white as it's a two-sided issue, and it's simply not. Fully support the guy's right to protest. Like, I think the media might disagree on that.
Yes, we do.
Well, he's at work.
Yes, we do.
And again, we've talked about this. If I did that at my job, if I decided to go on some kind of a protest at my job that my employer completely disagreed with, I'd probably get fired.
Yeah, I think we all would.
Very likely that would happen. But I mean, I don't think there's really anybody. Let's say if you took the paid employee aspect out of it, I don't really think there's anybody who would. Well, there's obviously not anybody. You're going to have people who would.
Of course, there's always that fringe, yeah.
But it's the same thing when I see somebody burning a flag. I think it's disgusting, but at the same time, I fully support the right to do it.
Saying I don't. And again, totally I don't. Yeah. And I'll tell you.
That's cool, though. And we'll find something we disagree on here.
Oh, absolutely.
So there we go. We got one.
I knew there was going to be plenty because there is when we normally speak.
Yeah.
But, and just for background for people real quick, in case you didn't realize, I'm black or black Hispanic and Dom is white. So it's kind of funny because you're like for Keapernick, I'm against Keapernick. And it's like the exact reverse of what the media would tell you is what we're supposed to be on the positions of. But I'm against Keapernick because one of the biggest things is this is not an ordinary citizen. And I think I've said this to you before.
Absolutely.
Now, if it was you, I can't even do that. I can't even claim this because I get on radio. I'm a public figure or a quasi-public figure, and I get on news and TV shows, and I have my own program, so I don't even count in this. But a regular person like yourself, you get on national TV. This may be the only time you're ever going to be on national TV. I can understand taking that moment to use that exposure to advance a political idea. Whether I think it's right or wrong, but I can understand it at least. Because you're never going to have that exposure again, very likely. So this is your opportunity to use it for that advantage. Okay, that makes sense. Keapernick isn't that. He is a multimillionaire in a sports industry that even in the last 2 years when he hasn't worked, still can command the press and can hold a press conference at any time he wants. And the media will come and he will get whatever message he wants out there. And instead, he wants to hijack the time of his employer, the NFL, and his team, whatever team he may or may not be working for, and the fans who have paid, I mean, in the stadiums, on cable TV for pay-per-view, plus cable, whatever, however they're going. All the fans are paying into this. He's hijacking their time and hijacking their opinion, and again, removing their choice and saying, you're going to hear this. You are compelled to hear and see my protest when you don't want. That's not what you're here for. See, that's wrong.
See, that's where I'll disagree with you. All right. So he has that platform, right? And I honestly, I think it's the kneeling protest. I see why maybe not most Americans, but a lot of Americans don't like that just from the point of get your politics out of my sports. Yeah. I'm not here for your politics. So automatically the platform, even if you agreed with the message or maybe could be swayed to agree with the message, is going to put a lot of people off because you're using a platform that a lot of people are like, this isn't the time or the place. I didn't want to hear about this. I do this to forget about all the problems in the world. Yeah. Whether that's right or wrong, I think a lot of people are coming from that standpoint. There is a lot of that, yes. But what I'm with him, like that's exactly why he's doing this, because it's the only way to cram that message. Whether or not you agree with the message, it's his only way to cram that message down people's throats. But see, that's compelling. That's compelling. It definitely is. But I mean, because if I would never be able to get that same message out to the number of people that he could. But no. And if you were suddenly on TV at the NFL for whatever reason, and this is your moment, they've given you 15 seconds or 15 minutes, whatever it is, and you've got this opportunity, I get that. You're not going to be on national TV again. Yeah.
He is.
Yeah, that's why he's doing it though.
And that, yeah,
So always be on national
but that's
TV.
why it's wrong, because he can be on TV at any time.
Yeah.
He can get the reporters and they can run the story. And I have the choice at that point when I'm watching the news or I'm watching a podcast or I'm watching whatever, YouTube, whatever format he's putting it out there. I can watch it anytime I want because I want to find out about that story, as opposed to, here it is, I am compelling you, I am forcing it on you, and you have no choice because I've hijacked what you are coming here for.
You do have a choice. You can change the channel.
Yeah, but now I'm
don't have to watch football.
But now I'm losing my football.
Yeah.
But see, that's not
Well, that's
right.
why I'm saying it's not a good platform.
Well,
I'm just saying I think where he's coming from, it's a bad platform, but it's effective in garnering a lot of. Has it not garnered a ton of attention?
I think
so. It is effective.
It's gotten a lot of attention. I don't think any of it's positive.
I think an outside press conference would never have garnered that much attention.
But that's okay
because
it's
time
not
to kneel for the anthem except on national TV.
But that's okay. Guess what? If it's not going to garner a lot of attention, then it's not a great idea. And there's your problem.
Yeah.
It's not my fault that he picked a horrible subject that a lot of people don't care about or don't agree with him on to be the thing he wants to talk about. Fantastic. Just because you're going to get a small audience doesn't mean that you need to hijack my thing because you'll get a larger audience. Screw you. You're wrong. Because if I went, and I'll give you an example. If you or I went on and say, I don't know, what's something that's very left? One of the
Turks, something like that, you mean?
Well, not even.
Show?
Let's think about what's the festival? One of the Fairy Fest.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, Fairy Fest, which is a bit left leaning, let's say. Okay, or one of the women's events. They have another one.
Oh yeah. Marches or
women's march or
Big Cats.
Yeah. So I go to one of those, and suddenly I get on stage because maybe they hired me to be an MC or something like that. Or you have a great voice. Yeah. So maybe they ask you to be MC. And suddenly I decide to tell them about my opinion on abortion. Or I tell them my opinion about the Second Amendment and red flags. Yeah. They're not there for that. I'm wrong. Yeah. I'm wrong. But yet is that fair? Is that right? Because that's exactly what Keapernick's doing. Now they have the opportunity to leave the event, but how many people are being hurt by that?
Hurt though. Speech doesn't hurt anybody. That's the biggest problem. If you want to go back to the circle all the way back around to free speech.
Well, they're being hurt because I just took them away. If they leave the event because I hijacked it and put my message in there, and they leave the event because they have the choice to go and not be there for that. Yeah. Well, what about all the vendors and all the people, the performers, and everyone else who's there, and they're there for that event that was supposed to be not about my issue, but theirs. They're being hurt. So and Keapernick is hurting people. People in the NFL, the people who are behind the scenes, who are doing commercials, who are building the commercials, putting them on the TV stations, the guys who are working the cameras, the other players, everybody who's associated with this, and they count on X number of viewers, and the more viewers they have, the higher the potential for people to get paid. Even ESPN afterwards, you're taking away from all of the highlights they're going to have. They're going to be talking about something that isn't. Suddenly they're talking about politics in the sports, and now they're going to have fewer viewers. Yeah. So everyone is being hurt. He is hurting people. It's just not physical harm, and it's not an instant, direct, one-to-one that you can see. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
I can follow that a little bit, but at the same time, in the example you gave ESPN, now it's not that they're forced to talk about it more; they choose to talk about these things. And I think that's a big reason why you're seeing ESPN's, as far as I know, their viewership's way down. Yeah, that's where a lot of the viewership of the NFL's down. Like I said, it is a bad platform. It alienates people for sure. Right. And then to talk about whether or not, I think what you're getting back to is whether or not should he be fired for that or not.
I think
the example you gave, if you were to work as an MC for an event like that,
I'd get fired.
I would look at it like this, right? That would be him kneeling for the anthem. That's pre-game, really. That's not. But he's not paid to kneel for the anthem. He's not paid to stand for the anthem. He's paid to play football.
No, he's paid to be on that field, whether he's in uniform, out of uniform. And you notice when most of the players are out of uniform, they're in suits. Mm-hmm. You are paid for that day, from the moment you get onto the field until the time you come off the field at the end of the game. And including even after the game, when you're talking to reporters, that's all on. You're getting paid.
Yeah, he's
that's
there
your
and he's
time.
physically present.
Right. So the moment he's on, and if cameras are being taken away from anything else that would normally go on, be focused on him and what he's doing and his protest, that's their time. Mm-hmm. That's time he's getting paid for. That isn't his.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and again, and I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But very much it's the wrong format, which then for me invalidates the message.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I can see both sides of this one a lot, especially with whether or not somebody like that should be fired for that protest.
Right. Because a regular person gets fired for that.
Yeah, very true, very true. But I can't get behind forcing someone to pledge allegiance to the government. That's really where that sits wrong with me.
Well, no, you can't. And that's actually a Supreme Court thing. You can't force someone. Actually, in 1977, Chief Justice Berger was, I forget the name of the case right this second, but he cited and stated the government cannot compel a person to promote a message, no matter how positive someone may see that message as. You cannot compel them. So the government can't compel someone to pledge allegiance. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that he's compelled by the government to stand up. So if he wants to stand up and put his hands at his sides during the national anthem, have at it. Mm-hmm. But when he actively does something that would, and seeing the difference is, one, it's not the government, it's a private business,
sure,
with its own rules, which actually he is violating a rule. It is a rule in the NFL that up until this year, it was a rule that they could penalize him on.
Do you want private businesses enforcing nationalism? I feel like it's towing a line. It's
a close. Well, you know what? It's a choice. It's a choice of the business.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't like compulsion. I don't like it no matter who's doing the compulsion. Mm-hmm. I don't agree with compulsion. But if it's an option, if it's something that they can choose to do, why not?
Yeah.
You know, Budweiser did 9/11 commercial. No one compelled them to do that.
Yeah.
They wanted to do a 9/11 commercial. Have at it. Mm-hmm. And Nike picked Keapernick. Yeah. I think it's wrong. I think he's a horrible spokesman for them. And I see the backlash and they're losing billions because they're taking advantage of poor people.
Yeah.
Because they don't care.
Oh, the whole thing's really disgusting. It's really gross.
They could care less. By the way, folks, that's the little puppy.
Just the idea that Nike could possibly care about.
Yeah, they could care
about any kind of social justice.
They've had 2 years to talk about this. If they really wanted to, at any moment, Nike, and again, they have a format. At any time, they could have been talking about this all day and night if they actually thought it was important. Mm-hmm. No, this is an opportunity for them to make money off of poor people on an overpriced product, which are sneakers.
Yep. Yeah.
They could care less.
It's a calculated move.
Right.
They're rolling the dice on this one, thinking there's going to be some big upswing from the controversy. I think you're already seeing like stock drop.
Yep.
I think you're going to see long term the numbers are going to go down, but their numbers immediately went up as far as what I've seen. Yeah.
$500,000. They gained $500,000 in sales, but they lost $4 billion in market value.
Yeah. So everybody's going to run out and they're going to forget for a month. They're going to do really well, and everybody's going to forget that Nike even got behind them.
Oh, I don't think
it's the nearest. It's the as far as people buying Nike.
Well,
because if somebody's going to go, I'm going to buy a Nike T-shirt because they got Keapernick as their spokesman. Like that's going to wear off quick.
Yeah, I think so.
In a year, nobody's buying Nike because of Keapernick.
No,
that's what I'm saying.
I hope
but people are still going to be like, I'm not ever going to buy Nike again because of this. Oh, that impact's going to be long term, without a doubt.
Oh yeah, I think it's going to be horrible. We've been talking about a lot of different things here. I'm going to take a quick break, and we're going to come right back. And let's try a different subject, something a little bit more a little different in the interest. Talking about 2020, talking about the future of the Democratic Party, the elections that are coming up here in 2018. So what we'll do is we'll take a quick break, and then we'll be right back with Dom and myself at the No Soundbites Allowed podcast.
I ain't had to waste. I don't even remember how you would taste on my lips. Used to be something I needed. Now I see I had a reason. I was bummed out, stressed out, yeah. Think you made me feel the best I had. For a minute I thought I needed you. Now I'm seeing through all of the reasons that I made up in my head. I'm breaking the habit. I'm breaking the habit. I'm breaking the habits that I had, 'cause look where it's got me. Searching for myself, didn't know I lost me. I ain't no saint. Let the devil have a way. I regret it every day. I was bummed out, stressed out, yeah. Think you made me feel the best I had. For a minute I thought I needed you. Now I'm seeing through all of the reasons that I made up in my head. I'm breaking the habit. I'm breaking the habit. I'm breaking the I'm breaking the habit. I'm breaking the habit. I'm breaking the I'm breaking the habit. I'm breaking the
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us back. That's right. This is the No Soundbites Allowed podcast. You just were listening to Matt Cornwell as he was singing on his album Icarus, and I hope you've been enjoying that. In addition, I hope you enjoyed the conversation I'm having with my associate Dom. He's here in studio with me, and we're talking about a bunch of issues. And I always enjoy this. This is the best time when I get to get that direct feedback. And sometimes people, it's perfect because not everyone agrees. Even people on the right of an issue don't always agree, let alone people on the left or the far left. So it's always great to have that kind of insight and the whole point is, let's think about it. These are issues you can't talk about in 30 seconds, you know? Yeah, they're issues that you have to really think about because there's so many nuances. And I want to thank everyone for being here with us. I thank you all for that. Now, technology is catching up with us here. So I know in the last segment, Dom, we were talking a lot about the First Amendment, Keapernick as an expansion of that and part of it as well. And we have slight differences there, which is great. But let's look at another thing, which is kind of related, but not quite. Let's look at the future of the Democratic Party and how that affects 2020 and just overall. Because a lot of the people who are pushing the Keapernick idea and are that Nike is marketing towards, besides the people who are poor, they're also targeting those who are on the far left.
Yep.
And the future of the Democratic Party, according to Tom Price, who's the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, he said that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is the future of the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And she is a democratic socialist, which in my world means she's a communist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because a socialist is just a communist light And it's on that path. It only leads one way when you start going down that path. And that's the communism. I've lived in Russia. I've seen communism. No, no, and no. But what do you think?
Oh man, this is an interesting one. So even from a strategic standpoint, this is something I'm interested in. So what does the party do? Do they bank on going super far left? Do they run a bunch of socialists? Do they try to push people like Cortez and Sanders on everybody again? Or is that going to alienate so much of America that they don't stand a chance of winning the election? I would hope that those kind of politics alienate the vast majority of Americans. Unfortunately, I don't think it seems like people aren't educated enough on really what socialism kind of leads to. I think they're fed a lot of lies about it. I think they're fed a lot of lies about democratic socialism and what that means. I think that's the Nordic countries, and those countries are pretty far from it. They're free markets with huge welfare systems, essentially.
Well, there's a couple things in that. Yeah. So just so you know, and a lot of people may not know this, there was a study that was done recently. I believe it was by I forget the name of the organization. I'll have it in the sources for the site. But they did a poll of millennials, and actually the number of millennials is somewhere around, I think they hit a new high of 60% or 70%, that millennials are in favor of socialism.
Oh, God. Yeah, I've seen some stuff like that.
And they love Che, and
it's scary, man.
It is.
Well, it's like I don't know what it's like for you. You know, I think you're maybe a little bit older than me.
I'm 50.
50? Jeez, well, good
for
you, man.
I'm older.
Looking good for 50, man. I think you're early 40s. So here we go. So even it being 33, and I bet it's even worse now, but I remember in high school and in college learning a lot more in history classes about how awful the Nazis were and almost nothing about how awful the communists were. And basically nothing about economics when it came to socialism, communism, capitalism, and how these things differ. It's like you're kind of on your own to educate yourself about those things. And you left knowing that, well, the Nazis were really bad people and fascism was awful. And that's just about the only, when it comes to totalitarianism, that's really what most people gain from it. So I think that you have a large amount of the public because if they really knew what socialism leads to, which, I mean, at its best, with I think all of us being dirt poor,
right.
At its worst, you see it right now in, you've seen it in Mao's China, you've seen it in communist Russia.
Venezuela.
Right now in Venezuela.
Yeah.
And Venezuela is who they propped up, 10, 15 years ago in all these celebrity causes and liberal politicians that was a great country and Chavez was great and all this stuff, man. And it's like, look how quickly that tide turned. And now they jump to the next one and the next one. So it's like, I know like Sanders like to talk about Denmark a lot. And the president of Denmark issued a statement to that. Did you see that?
Yeah, 3 years ago, he was talking about Venezuela. Yep. And now Venezuela is, in absolute chaos, people dying all over the place, and they're absolutely poor.
Yeah.
He was talking about Denmark, and the prime minister of Denmark said, no, you're wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
That he's misrepresenting their country.
And I think is it Norway that has the oil reserves, or is that Finland? I hate that I'm getting this mixed up right now. So Finland has that, and that's, you'll see, even if a country goes really far into I think they have more like social democrats versus democratic socialism, but anyway, you go really far into that. If you have a big enough wealth surplus, I mean, you'll see some success, like short-term success for a while. And
it's always short-term.
Yeah, it's short-term, and everybody's happy because they finally have more money, except for the people at the very top. And once you start cutting those people at the very top off, who are kind of the captains of industry and the people who supply the jobs for these people, and that's how you
see
from top down end up poor. Like the economy's just supposed to be built from the bottom up, not the top down.
Well, actually, I've seen my experience when I was living in Moscow, and I've talked to people who actually lived through communism for 75 years. What you do with the socialism is you actually cap this elitist group who are fixed, and they are the leaders. They're the top. They're not even a 1%. Yeah. They're fixed. Yeah, and they're locked in. And they have all the wealth. Yep. And then everybody else gets put into this socialist system, which drains everybody's resources.
But everyone's equal.
Yeah, everyone's equally poor. Exactly. Happens every single time. Yeah. So eventually it's, socialism, I think it was Margaret Thatcher who said, socialism works great until you run out of someone else's money.
Yeah. I wish people were more educated on that. I think it's really unfortunate. And from a moral argument, Well, you can look at it two ways from a moral argument. I look at it from the moral argument that it's stealing and theft is wrong.
It is. That's more of a libertarian,
Yep.
and Larry Sharp agrees with that, and a few others.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think, friends I know who would lean far left enough to support a socialist or a democratic socialist candidate, however you want to, what kind of ribbon you
Socialist
want to put on
is
that.
fine by me.
It's still socialist. Whatever kind of ribbon you want to put on that. I know that they're not coming from it from the people who support those candidates aren't coming from it from a position of the way Mao or Stalin or
Right.
Lenin
They don't want to kill
look at it.
anyone.
They're looking at it from a point of like, well, I think everybody should have everything else everyone has. People shouldn't be starving. People shouldn't be all these things. And of course, like nobody wants to see people starving. Of course, people in this utopia.
Well, utopia
doesn't exist exactly.
Yeah.
But I get where they're coming from. They're coming from a point of love. It's just that it's an ignorant point of love.
Well, it's wrong, I think, because, and I will say it, it's wrong, that viewpoint, because of two reasons. Blind compassion helps no one.
Yeah, exactly.
And if someone doesn't strive for something, they don't have a value to it.
Yeah.
And what we're creating is this idea, this expectation that you have an inherent right to something that you don't have. You have an inherent right to try. You have an inherent right to have the opportunity.
Yep.
You have no inherent right to have anything.
Exactly.
You can be free. You can be happy if you can be happy, and you can have an opportunity to live the life you want to live.
Yeah.
Whether or not that happens, that's on you.
Yep.
And circumstances. As long as the circumstances are relatively fair for everyone, fantastic. Have at it. You may fail. You may succeed. But at least along that path, you'll have a value for every success, every failure, and that helps make you greater. But if someone just gives it to you, you don't care about it,
Yep.
and it's not worthwhile.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you'll never be happy.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And, I think you see that misguided notion of, free healthcare, would that be great? These kind of things. And
Nothing's free.
yeah, exactly. And you're going to see a major quality in the decline of it if you make it free. I think that's just
And you've seen that around the world.
All around the world. So, and you're hardcore socialist. So, and this is something I think Orwell actually talked about this, even though he's a socialist himself, or had very socialist leanings.
Yeah.
His thoughts, and from what he knew just anecdotally from the people he met in these socialist circles, was they weren't so much motivated by a love of wanting to help the poor. It was a hatred of the rich.
Yeah.
And it was almost like a self-hatred.
Well, we see that a lot now.
Yeah, because it's not like a lot of impoverished people that you really see leaning towards these values. It's educated middle class, upper middle class people that take this moral high ground, this kind of virtue signaling, this idea that, well, yeah, healthcare should be free because people shouldn't be dying in the streets. It's like, well,
They're not.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's.
I love when they say that.
Yeah.
People are dying in the street. No, this isn't Venezuela.
Exactly.
People are not dying in the street en masse. No.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And, you're never going to hit 100% of everyone all the time. But
Yeah.
we're nowhere near the kind of absolute, we're not Africa.
Yeah,
So it's not happening like that. Let me ask you this.
sure.
You're 33.
33, yep.
Okay. You got a lot of friends who are in college or recently were in college. You deal as a bartender, and even sometimes your other business, you may be dealing with a lot of younger people.
Mm-hmm.
And when they find out that you have some of these leanings, which are more libertarian, I think, and more towards like Larry Sharp,
Yeah.
than say myself as a conservative Republican, how do they react to that?
In person, it's people want to discuss these things. That's what I've noticed. In person, people always want to have a discussion, and we're always friends at the end.
Right.
I don't like to talk politics on social media.
You love it with me.
I love, when you had your post, now that's cool to watch that and make those comments on it. But I'm not one to get in a day-long argument
Right.
posting it, because I think people are a lot different in these when you get them face to face, and you can usually reach a consensus. And like I'm saying, like, so my friends who would lean really left on a lot of these issues, like they're coming from it from, I think, what I think is a misguided standpoint, and then they think I'm coming from my values from a misguided standpoint, but they know I'm not coming from it from anything. I like. They know that I'm not against. They know that the reason I'm against universal health care isn't because I want people to die.
Right.
Whereas if you were to say something on the internet, I'm against universal health care, people are going to be like, well, you're a fascist and you want everyone to die. People don't say that to you in person.
They say it to me in person.
Yeah. Well, I don't know who you're hanging out with.
They say it. They say it a lot to me in person. Some of them, and mind you, you're right. There because we know some of the same people, and some of them are libertarians, or some of them are towards the left. One or two are the far left.
Yeah.
And I'll even give a shout out to Earl Walker, who's part of Citizen Action, but which I generally despise. But Earl, I like. I've had conversations where we're reasonable. We have disagreements often, but we have conversation, and I enjoy speaking with him. So I'm singling him out only because it's a very positive example.
Yeah.
Then again, other than that, you'd be amazed at some of the things they say to me and a lot of it has to do with race.
Yeah.
And they absolutely bore me.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, it's rough.
That's rough, man. Yeah, I get to say I don't get it a lot, but I used to get in these kind of political conversations on Facebook and everything, and then I just realized arguing on the internet is just it gets
exhausting.
I can't do it. I just have these massive arguments with people that you thought were your friends, and now they're hurling insults at you because you believe something else than what they believe, and it's like, I've never had to get that nasty in person.
Yeah. Well, I'm a little bit more of and I do it on purpose, that I'm a target.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't want to speak out about these things. They may have views either like yours or mine, or have questions about it. And you've seen it. People come up to me and they'll say, "What do you think?" And I try to be very fair about it when I'm talking in person and letting people know, okay, here's the full story. Here's everything that's involved with that, left and right. And you can make whatever decision you want. Yeah. And then if they go further, it's like, okay, what do you think, Mike? Well, okay, now you're going to hear the right side of the right leaning side of that, because that's who I am. But I do separate that. And so those are great conversations. Which is why I do it. And you've seen me do it. And we've had that happen. People come up, what do you think? Do you know about this stuff? What's going on? But I always find it interesting because for every one of these conversations, I have probably 5 where someone's like, and you are a racist. You are a sexist and ageist. I've been called just about every ist and ism that they have out there, and probably a few that they haven't even created yet. They just throw it on me and like disgusted. I think, when I was dating and they disappear and they're like, "Oh my God, you're evil." And you wouldn't believe some of the things they've said about me.
Yeah. Oh, that's awful.
I'm glad you didn't have that.
I've walked away from girls I was dating over stuff they believe, where it's like there's some things that are so far. Somebody's super far left. I mean, it's just I'm never going to agree with them. Like, there's very little we're going to agree on, and it's too contentious. But I've
had people do it to me just on. I remember when Ben Carson in 2016, when he was still in the debates and he was leading for a while. Yeah, and I had a bunch of black guys who were standing by me, and we were watching a news program in a certain location, and they were like, they thought he was ignorant, had no idea. I'm like, he's a brain surgeon, right?
Yeah.
It's like, but he's a Republican. I said, he's the world leading brain surgeon.
Yeah.
The man's a genius. Literally, he's a genius. Well, he's a Republican, so he's just evil. I'm like, he's evil. Okay, so he's evil because he's a Republican and he's black. Yeah, you can tell. I'm like, really? Because I'm a Republican. They're like, oh my God, you're evil too.
Yeah.
And then bunch of insults and then walked away.
Well, I think the Democrats they market a lot better than the Republicans do. I absolutely think that they've really sold America this message that they're the good guys, and they've sold America this message of Republicans are a bunch of old rich white guys that want to take all your money and support big businesses and leave you dying in the streets, and they want you to not be able to pay your medical bills, and they want you to have to go broke, going to college and all these things. And when you look at the policies that, if you look at the industries that are the most, the worst, the industries with the most inflation, the ones that are, doing the worst, when you look at our healthcare and our college, it's like, those are the ones with the most government intervention. They're the least free market industries that we have.
Every single time. And they are also the ones that keep rising. Yeah. The cost keeps rising because, if the government's paying for it, you can charge for whatever you want.
Yeah.
And they're going to keep paying because, they'll just print more money. And that's a problem.
But so actually, so back to 2020 then, which Democratic candidate do you think would ruin our country the least? And which do you think could ruin it?
Well, you know what? I'm going
to Not that there's official candidates yet, but I mean, who do you think's has a shot at winning, and who do you think could be the most detrimental to everything we hold dear to our freedom?
This is going to take a little while, so what we're going to do is take a quick break first, And then we'll come back to 2020 because that's going to be interesting. And folks, so we'll be right back. You're going to listen to a little more of Matt Cornwell, and then I'm going to come back with my guest in studio, Dom, talking about a whole bunch of ideas. I think you'll find it fun.
I say, lately I'm feeling like we ain't got no damn patience. Excuses why we cannot do this face to face, and then we cry, wonder why we ain't on the same damn page. If there's one thing I know, it's that this world keeps turning. No one seems concerned. Whoa, that this world keeps turning. One thing I learned, 'cause mama don't sleep at night since the sun done up and died. Ain't no brother's keeper, and no one looking out for the sisters either. And these families ain't no family, and no one giving second chances. I don't understand why. It seems like this world keeps turning. No one seems concerned. Yeah. Lately I'm feeling like you don't seem to be the same way. Excuses, but it's written on your face, and then we fight another night. This time we've been wasted. No, I don't understand why we could have it all, throw it all away, just 'cause everything don't go our way. Why? Just take a look outside, people losing lives. I'm just trying to see this world this much bigger than you and I. Lady, I'm feeling like we could make this all okay. No excuses, girl, we need to find a way and take our time and do this right before this all fades away. 'Cause if there's one thing I learned, it's that this world keeps turning. If there's one thing I learned, it's that this world keeps turning. No one seems concerned. It's that this world keeps turning. No one seems concerned. It's that this world keeps turning. No one seems concerned.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us back here at the No Soundbites Allowed podcast. And we're having a great time here with Dom, and we've just been talking throughout the entire break, talking about Larry Sharpe, talking about just the way people, the long form of conversation that we just don't get anymore in politics. It's all about the soundbite. It's all about that 30 seconds or that one sentence, as opposed to just really having a conversation, getting into what people really think, whatever the elected official is, in whatever position they have, but to really understand where they're coming from and why. And that gives us as voters a better opportunity to really understand what's going on. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's basically what we've been talking about throughout the break, right?
Yeah. So where we left, 2020 Democratic candidates who's going to ruin the country the most and who has the who actually has a shot. So I mean, let's see, who are the front runners? Who do you think is likely to run? Probably Cuomo.
Cuomo, Biden, Clinton.
Oh God, do you think Clinton run again?
Yeah, that woman has a plan. She is desperate to be president, the first woman president. She can care less about anything else.
Speaking of which, you think Elizabeth Warren will run?
Probably.
All right. then,
And she's also a miserable choice, I
oh
think.
my God, yeah.
Yeah. So she's just, again, we're going to the future of the Democratic Party. Super socialist, way out their minds, in my opinion.
Well, that's the thing. That's where, God, as much as I'm not a fan of Cuomo, I think that'd be the smart thing for them to do. Would be
No, he's horrible.
Versus,
And I think his wonderful
I think
statement.
the other ones might alienate people. Like middle Americans, way too much. I think if you get a socialist, like you get a hardcore Democratic socialist, or even just a very far left Democrat in there, I think it's
except for Bernie.
Set them up for except Bernie. Well, I don't know if you get enough Americans behind that, especially if the economy's doing well.
I think Bernie has, because he's like your granddad.
Yeah,
he's very comfortable. He's not imposing, and the way he presents the socialism, he makes it very friendly and very much like, well, you deserve this.
Yeah,
which is, it's basically oil, what they call it, slick oil salesman. Yeah, he's selling it. But he's not really giving people the consequences that go with it.
Absolutely.
Like, okay, it's going to be Medicaid for all. Well, it's also going to cost you 3 times as much in taxes, and we're going to double the debt. Oops, did I leave that part out?
Yeah. And if you want to know how bad government health coverage in the United States is going to be, just ask anybody who has to go to the VA for their...
Exactly. And now it's going to be national, so it won't even be that good.
Yep. Yeah, it'd be even worse.
Yeah, you're going to have a bigger department in the government, so you're going to grow the size of the government, grow the power of the government, and there's going to be more paperwork flowing, so it's going to be even less efficient than the VA is, because that's only because it's so contained and small is why it's efficient at all. And you magnify it to 300 million people, and I guarantee you it's going to be a complete fiasco, and everyone's going to be worse off medically. Yeah. But that's so Bernie.
Well, Bernie, the thing with Bernie, so many of my friends that are Bernie supporters also they share with me the one thing we always agree on is a mutual distrust for the federal government. And I don't know why you would vote for a socialist if you have a strong distrust for your federal government. Why would you want to make it bigger? I
think it goes back to what you were saying. Democrats sell it better. And like I said, Bernie sells it really well. Yeah. He makes it sound attractive. If I hadn't been in Russia, I'd be like, well, he makes that sound kind of good. Those are kind of good things. Yeah. I wouldn't be against taking away medicine from people, but we're not.
Yeah.
If it weren't for all the stuff that I do and I've been doing for so long, I'd say, yeah, Bernie kind of sounds good. It sounds like something I would want to do, except I'm also looking at, and then what?
Yeah.
What's the consequence of this? What's the next thing that's going to happen? Okay, you gave me this, and then you're also giving me something else with it, by the way. Yeah. And I don't think enough people ask about that. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think you're going to see Elizabeth Warren. She's going to run. She's going to do the same thing.
Do you think she'd have a shot at winning? So as far as who's going to run and who has a shot at winning, do you think she could even win the primary or not even?
I think she winds up being a VP choice.
Yeah,
she can't
Biden.
Win. Probably for Biden.
I mean, I'm guessing Biden would be the front runner out of that.
He's big, but you might see either Kamala Harris or Cory Booker.
Do you think they're... See, that's what I'm saying. They're going pretty far left of them.
Yeah.
I think they've made complete fools out of themselves in the Kavanaugh hearings. But I don't know if that's... But if you look at the left media of those videos, it's talking about how brave they are. And
my God.
Spartacus moment.
Yeah. Oh, isn't that great? They're standing up for it. No, they're not. They're not. They're lying.
Grandstanding.
They're grandstanding and lying and misquoting a perfectly qualified Supreme Court justice. But because they've got the positive media, and we have so much of the media that's so far left leaning, they're getting this big positive spin. And, we got to say it. Cory Booker is black. Mm-hmm. Kamala Harris is black and a woman.
Yep.
And in the hierarchy of far left politics, the more things you can check off in your boxes, the better of a person you are.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the only thing better than Kamala Harris, who's black and a woman, and a Democrat, would be if she was transgender. And if she was that, I mean, she'd run the whole Democratic Party.
Yep.
And that, I think that's a problem.
Yeah.
So I think, they're going to go for the main ticket is going to be someone far left. It probably would be Cory Booker with a equally or mostly far left person of the opposite gender who's going to run as the VP. Yeah. So it would be Booker and Warren, and they're going for the solid left future of the Democratic Party, I think, against Trump and Pence again, going, okay, we're center right. And I mean, they look more far right when you compare them, because the other guys are so far left. Anything to the right looks like it's extremely right.
Yeah, true.
And I think that's something a lot of people don't look at. It's like, no, you got to balance that. It's not that, Trump's super to the right. He's not a super Republican. He's not. Look at his history over the last 30 years. Yeah.
Literally was a Democrat.
Yeah. He's basically what used to be a blue dog Democrat for the most part. He's Democrat light or Republican light, if you want to look at it that way, in a lot of ways. But he's opposed by and he's balanced by the far left leaning and running of pretty much the entire Democratic Party. So it makes him seem like, oh, well, he's got to be way far right. Well, no, they're just that far left.
Yeah. And I think it would be a mistake to run somebody that far left, because I don't think you're going to win 2016 Trump voters over with somebody super far left. But I think you could win them over you could win some Trump voters over with a centrist Democrat.
But they're counting on the younger generation, your generation and below.
And that never works out.
Well,
you just don't vote.
No.
I mean, really, it's sad to say, but like,
why
there's
don't
always
you
a
guys
lot of
vote?
hype behind it, and we don't.
Why don't you guys vote?
Oh man, geez, I don't. There's so many things behind that. I think a lot of things that we actually. I didn't even vote in the 2016 presidential election.
Oh, you're so bad.
I know, and I couldn't bring myself to do it because I'm not a Trump supporter. I'll admit when he does good, and I'll admit when he does bad. Like, absolutely. There's no way in hell I was going to vote for Hillary. I mean, that wasn't even an option.
She's a criminal,
and I'm not. So I wasn't a never Trumper. I wasn't going to vote for Hillary Clinton just to
spite
get Trump
him.
out of there. Yeah,
Right.
And I know this is going to probably sound like a cop out, but I think and a lot of people share these kind of sentiments. So you see this if you're in a state that totally is, historically one way or another, red or blue, it feels like you don't have a voice. So if you're in upstate New York and you're a right-leaning guy, you know that New York City's going to decide your votes, and it's like, why even bother? Why
heard that often.
And I hate that. It's a sad reality, and obviously that can change. There's enough people if you had everybody in upstate New York.
See, there's my thing.
That's Larry Sharp's thing. Let's win upstate. With those kind of more right-leaning, like free market,
disenfranchised voters.
Yeah, exactly.
I understand.
To bring some businesses to upstate New York. I mean, absolutely. I mean, that's something that's if you're at least going to acknowledge that upstate New York is a place, as a New York politician,
it would help.
Then you instantly have my attention.
Well, think about it. See, this is the thing that frustrates me, and it frustrates me because there's about 8-9 million people, roughly about 7 million voters in New York City, and roughly about the same, maybe a little bit more in upstate New York, eligible voters. And in every election, we see about 3 out of 10 people actually come out and vote. Mm-hmm. And I always tell people, when it's 3 out of 10, you're never getting a good representation. And New York City is going to outweigh because they're showing up and upstate usually doesn't. But if we had 7 out of 10 people vote, which is just get up and vote, then you change the numbers. The whole equation changes in modern politics because they're counting on the fact that you're not going to show up.
Yeah.
And if you bring them in, good, bad, or indifferent, it definitely makes a difference. All of a sudden, all politics changed because 7 out of 10 people showed up.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
And that's why I say, and so I got to beat up on you a little bit because you got to vote. You got to vote.
Totally. And that's, not to get too off topic, but that's something people talk about a lot as far as how do you increase that? Like, what do you think about voting online?
I don't like it because I think it's too easy to corrupt.
Just go on. Or very true, very true. Or
I prefer going back to the old paper ballots because you can punch it or write your name on it and say, this is what I want. Yeah. I think that's the better choice because it's very, very straightforward and it's harder. Well, it is and it isn't harder to corrupt. But if I have a physical thing, I have a better chance, I think, of saying, okay, is this real? Is it corrupt or not? As opposed to something online where you got some kid who's good enough to break into the Pentagon. He's good enough to break into the voting system. Yeah.
The other one, this is actually, this is one idea which, like I said, I like to be ideologically consistent.
Right.
And this is something I've heard from more of my lefty friends, but making Election Day a federal holiday.
Why?
So that you...
But you can go.
So you
the
can
the polls are open from usually from 8 a.m. until 9.
Yeah.
That's plenty of time.
True.
And for how many generations and how many year after year, how many people can make it to vote?
Yeah, I think a lot of people like it's crazy to think like, well, I don't want to wait around. I don't want to deal with the hassle over something that important. But
as opposed to, oh my God, I've got to see the next episode of Desperate Housewives.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
and here's the other thing too, and it's like you never want to disenfranchise people, but this is a controversial one.
What?
Like some sort of a test, an aptitude test, or something that at least test your knowledge. So you can't just go in there and go boom, 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 boom. I'm voting for everybody on the side, or I'm just in there like randomly.
Oh, they're going to forget that, man.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, people will be screaming at us right now about that and be like,
absolutely,
no, that's race test. That's a race test.
Absolutely, and but it's crazy to think that like you can. People vote for candidates based on 100% emotions, or I like this guy's face.
I've seen people. I've seen go. Yeah. Because I like this color they're wearing. I like the way they do their hair. I know one person who's a little bit crazy. I'll give it that. She goes, I won't vote for anyone with a name that starts with P.
Oh my God.
I'm like, what in the world are you talking about? And she was absolutely serious when she told me this. I'm like, well, one, the people we're talking about, no one has a name that starts with P. Mm-hmm. So that's useless. And two, that is the most stupid reason I've ever heard of someone saying I will or will not vote.
Yeah.
But it's out there. I mean, I ran into one person who said that there's got to be a couple thousand other people across America that have the same view.
Absolutely. And when I say like a test, like maybe aptitude wasn't the right word. I don't mean like an IQ test or saying somebody's smart enough to vote, but to demonstrate, at least to know, and it would make it more even clogged up. And this is just really hypothetical, but to at least know like what stances your candidate has and where they line up with your own values. So, there's people, who will constantly vote against their own best interests and what might help their city or their county or their state or the country. And it's just,
but again, that goes to, I think that's partially because people don't understand the consequences of, we're going to do this. Yeah. You've heard me talk about the red flags. Mm-hmm. I'm going to just use that as a quick example, an easy one. So red flag legislation, if people haven't listened to the program, I've talked about it a lot, and I did a really comprehensive speech on it. And it essentially allows for someone to virtually secretly go to the courts and petition the court to come take your firearms if you own them without your knowledge until the moment they're coming to take them. And also as a consequence, if you have any children in the household, they take the children as well because you're a danger. I think that's absolutely wrong, right? Mm-hmm. But a lot of people aren't hearing that. What they hear, what the message is, and the way it's being sold is, we're going to make people safer.
Yeah.
Except none of the data shows that. And I've looked at the data, the studies from Duke University, Indiana University. Nothing shows that people are actually made safer.
Yeah.
We're just seeing people have fewer rights. But if you're not telling them that, and no one asks the question, and then what happens?
Yeah.
How many thousands of dollars is it going to cost me to prove myself innocent of this non-charge?
Yep.
The questions: is this the way due process is supposed to be? No. Mm-hmm. Well, and you're not asking that. You're not asking, well, what's going to be the damage to my reputation and the economics and my job and the kids in school? If you're not asking that, and all you're hearing and all you're accepting is, well, here's the sales pitch. You don't see the consequence. Yet people vote against their own interest on that.
Absolutely, man. And then you'll see that too, especially with that red flag law. I think people look at that as, what's going to keep them safer, but they're not looking at that from the point of, again, you just give the government more power.
Yeah.
And it's like, how long do you think until that's abused? How long do you think that that's used against somebody's political enemies?
I guarantee you it's going to be
the population
almost immediately.
Yeah.
Almost immediately.
Yeah. It's like I totally get it, and I think that would probably take us out a totally different wormhole with shootings and everything. But
because it doesn't. The criminals aren't going to really be deterred,
exactly.
And you don't even know if you're going after the criminals. It's anyone.
Yeah.
So how often are they getting criminals in that? So far, there's no data that they are.
Yep. We
know they're getting from regular law-abiding citizens, but we have no idea about the criminals. So overall, as far as all the data out there, they're just hurting regular people.
Yeah.
And no one's getting safer. They're not saving lives. That just makes the government more powerful and hurts people more.
Yeah.
And I disagree with that a lot.
Absolutely, man. I fully do too. Yeah, like you even see with the Florida shooter.
Which one? The Parkland.
Parkland shooter.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? And he was on law enforcement's map for
Yeah.
a long time before that happened.
And they missed it completely.
So really, what would that have accomplished if they were able to take his guns to Red Flag? Well, they wouldn't have anyway because they had plenty of opportunities.
Yeah, but he made bombs.
Yeah, exactly.
He made bombs
too. But there's plenty of opportunities to confront this kid and arrest him or get this message out to his guardians that there's like something serious wrong with this kid, and it was just ignored. It wasn't even like direct threats to the FBI. You know, picked up, and the FBI can't figure out who he is based on a YouTube handle. Like,
yeah. And if they came in and took all the guns,
come on, it's nuts.
Well, he's still making bombs,
Exactly.
and so you're still looking at a threat. They haven't resolved and made anyone safer.
Because the gun's not. I know it's so cliche. The gun's not going to kill anybody.
That's true.
He's going to kill somebody.
It's true.
Yeah.
We've seen people do it with guns, knives, cars.
That's the new one.
Planes. I mean, there you go. Crazy people, crazy evil people find a way every single time.
Yeah.
Pause 1 second.
Sure.
We'll be right back. And so let me ask you this. I know we've been covering a lot of different ground here, a lot of different viewpoints. First, you having fun?
Yeah, absolutely. This is great.
Okay.
It's a good discussion.
And I think it's people don't have this kind of discussion often enough.
Yeah.
I know we do it every so often, and then we got everyone looking at us like, oh my God, are you guys at that?
Yeah.
And they just look at us like, really? You guys are talking about this for half an hour? It's like, well, it's actually kind of important.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
And sometimes, like in this, we don't always agree. There's shades of agreement as well.
Yep.
Like to this point, we agree, and this one we don't. But I think it's important that we have these conversations. And that's why I love having real people in here, like non-politicians.
Yeah.
I count politicians were a weird set of creatures, but real people with like real viewpoints. Because it's like, okay, it's not quite the thing that we're talking about in the public or what we're seeing in the media. It's what real people, real lives deal with. And I think in politics, especially the longer you're doing it, the more you kind of lose sight of that.
Yeah.
So it's always important, and that's why I love this. But I know we've covered a lot, and we kind of hit it on mass shootings.
Yeah.
And I want to talk a little bit more about that because I was talking about the red flag and we were talking a little bit about Florida and the Parkland shooting. What's your view? What do you see for yourself, the view of the Second Amendment?
Yeah.
And what do you think your friends that you speak with in your age group, what do they think about it?
Yeah, so I'm a big Second Amendment supporter. I'm a gun owner myself. I keep a gun under my bed for protection.
Right.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in that. I think it's more for, I think the Second Amendment, any diehard Second Amendment supporter knows this. It's more about protection of yourself, protecting yourself from a tyrannical government.
Right.
That's absolutely why why that amendment exists in the first place.
Absolutely.
Is to ensure that people can protect themselves from a government gone usurpacious. So that being said, I think a lot of my friends they're supporters of, I don't think they look at it like that. They look at it like, well, yeah, you should have a gun to hunt or maybe a gun to protect yourself, but you don't need a fill in the blank, whatever,
Right.
Assault weapon is being demonized at the moment, or, whatever it was, I guess, well, you don't need 30 rounds. You don't need 20 rounds, 15 rounds. I don't know how many rounds are you going to bring this down to?
Yeah, but you don't need a plane. You don't need that couch. You don't need that TV, that iPad.
Exactly.
Need is
you don't need these things to defend yourself. And I think that's a slippery slope when you start to introduce that kind of legislation against what you can and can't own in terms of weapon. So my thoughts on this is, as far as mass shootings, I think this is really more about you have a generation of males that feel completely left behind. They feel useless. I think what you see a lot of is it's really interesting, that whole incel community. Do you know what I'm talking about? The
incel?
Incels. Have you heard that term?
I've heard it, but quite honestly, I don't recall this moment what it is.
Quick breakdown of that. An incel is involuntary celibate, right? So they are men who are...
That's stupid.
They'd love to be meeting women and having sex with women, but they can't because they are so flawed socially, right? And in their minds, it's a combination of their looks, because a lot of them acknowledge that they're too awkward, they're too uncomfortable in their own skin, they're too insecure. There's like online communities that these people exist, and
they were called wallflowers when I was younger.
Yeah, well, and I think it's gotten a lot worse in these current years as far as the kind of isolation young men and boys face. I think a lot of, I mean, there's so many issues you could point to that.
Well, Me Too is one example.
Yeah, and you get demonized as just, masculine traits can be kind of demonized, and they really don't know where to find themselves in the world. On top of that, I think you get, well, God, I could go really deep into this one. So basically, these men feel that there's nothing for them, right?
Right.
And in some ways there is. They've kind of almost, they've been kind of nixed out of the human equation in a lot of ways, in the sexual equation especially.
Okay. And that's an important part.
Yeah, I think that's very important. It's, that you have no friends, you have no chance at a girlfriend, you have no chance at any kind of a normal life. There's nothing for you. There's no, then you throw on that jobs and all these things that I think are kind of stacked against a lot of these guys, right? And they find solace within this community of other guys who feel the same way, but their thoughts are dark, and their thoughts become very, they're very self-defeating. There's no chance. They recognize that as there's like no chance of getting out of this, right?
So it's like a vortex that just spirals down.
It's really crazy stuff. I mean, these guys, like, they look up and almost worship figures like, his name escapes me, but who was the UCLA shooter?
I know which one you're talking about.
He wrote a big manifesto
about
how people don't appreciate him for the genius he is, and girls don't like me even though I'm such a good-looking man, and nobody sees just how great I am, and now I have to go kill all them because they didn't realize how just my actual greatness.
Yeah,
and this is basically, that's that profile of the mass shooter over and over and over again, and you see this.
Yeah, you do see that a lot. Yeah,
it's a lot more of that. I think your big exception to it is the Las Vegas shooter.
Well, he was an exception in a lot of ways.
In so many ways.
So
that one's fascinating.
And a lot of shooters aren't. Well, I can see the incel that falls into, I'd say, off of the top of my head, probably about 50-60% of most of the mass shooters we've seen over the last decade. But then there's always those one-offs that are way outside the norm. The Las Vegas shooter is one of those, way outside the norm.
Yeah.
Doesn't really fit any of the profiles or general things we tend to expect from them.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of these guys, they become so detached through this kind of thinking. And there's a lot of like theories that SSRIs kind of contribute to this kind of detached kind of you're not really living your life like your real life in a way, because you have so many chemicals going on there.
Yeah, that's a problem too.
So I think you throw in that mix, and I think what you get is this ideology that you can go out with a homicide as opposed to a suicide, and that's really going to show everybody, and you're going to live in infamy.
Oh, yeah, that's a big part of it too, is the infamy part. People don't, I don't know, maybe it's my age or maybe it's my viewpoint, but I don't see a lot of people who make that separation between infamy and fame.
Yep.
They're not the same.
Yeah.
And they're not supposed to be treated the same.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things I think the media really takes us when they take these shooters. They like to paint this narrative of, well, when it's a white kid who's a teenager and he's not a terrorist then, he's mentally troubled, but they want to use different language for that. But I think that's like spot on. Like, if there's no like a political or religious ideology behind this. This is like a loner who is clearly suffering from mental illness, who has his world completely backwards, and he's got a completely unhealthy worldview. I mean, that's to equate that to Islamic terrorism or domestic terrorism, even in
most of them aren't political.
They're completely separate motives, and they have very little to anything in common with
like Dylan Roof. Dylan Roof. That's a terrorist. That's a terrorist he had a message that he was going for. But then you look at Parkland, he didn't. Yeah. That's not the same thing. Two different categories. Again, like we said with Las Vegas, it's different categories. And they're pretty clear to figure out. They're not on the same. Yes, they're all mentally deranged, given. And
to an extent, yeah.
And they're evil to an extent.
Yeah.
But different motivations, very much different motivations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you take a guy like Dylan Roof or even a guy like Timothy McVeigh, especially a guy like McVeigh. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a psychopath through and through, right?
Oh, yeah.
Probably not, has a personality disorder, not so much a mood disorder or a mental illness in that way.
Yeah.
Without getting too deep into psychology, but it's a totally different motive. And I think the media is really dishonest when they want to talk about what drives these people, because they really just want to make it all about the gun, as if any person can randomly become that guy
No,
it doesn't happen overnight, and there's always warning signs. And I think what really needs to be addressed is like how are these mass shooters created? Because if you take away their gun,
they're still going to do
they're
something.
Make a bomb. They're going to crash their car into something. Sure, they might be able to kill more people with a gun. Like, I get that.
Sometimes.
But I think it's, exactly. We kill a lot more people with a massive bomb if you can build them that big.
Or a car that just keeps rolling through people,
But even what that comes down to is even if that was the case, it's like, what's the saying? You can either have safety or liberty.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. It's a double-edged sword.
You can have safety or liberty. So you can give up your gun rights and not have mass shootings anymore, but let's see where that goes.
But doesn't mean you're not going to have...
to turn on you.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean you're going to have... and it's a great line I always like to remind people. Just because you don't have a gun doesn't mean the criminal doesn't. Because they are, by definition, a criminal. They break the law. They could care less whether the law says you should or shouldn't have a gun. They're going to have one anyway.
Yeah.
And probably, and more often we see than not, the more regular people don't have guns, the more the criminals are, because it gives them an unfair advantage because they know no one else has it.
Yeah.
So they're winning more in their point of view. And I think that's a problem. And again, it goes into that long-term view. And then what?
Yeah.
You did this, but then what's the consequence? And we got to think about this because, whether it's the incels, which is interesting, and I honestly didn't know enough about that, but looking at the incels, what are the most, and it goes to one of my core things is what makes a teenager, a 20-something-year-old say the only choice I have is to go out and kill a bunch of people.
Yeah.
It's like, what's going on in your head that makes you say, that's the only answer I have. That makes perfect sense. I'm going to just go out and kill a bunch of people. What's wrong with you that you got to that point? And if we can figure that out, like you're mentioning about the incels, maybe that's part of it. And if that's it, we can address that. That saves lives. Because it's not the 150, 160 million people who have guns. 99.999% of them don't break laws.
Absolutely, man. Yeah.
So why are we beating up on them? Because literally it's about 20 people a year for the last 35 years, on average, 20 people a year that commit these incidents, and about 100 people per year die in the mass shootings. And of course, there's always, it goes up and down.
Yeah.
But that's the average. We've got 20 people versus 160 million.
Yeah.
Why are we applying the same rules? We're looking for something else.
Yeah. And that's, and I hate to sound super conspiratorial like that, but it's like, it's a smokescreen. It's like, not that, I'm not going to, go Alex Jones on this and say the government engineered these mass shootings. By no means do I think that, but I think that's it gets taken advantage of. And it's like, well, here's a way that we can take more guns from people right now.
It seems to be.
Let's capitalize on this one. And when I talk about, the stuff that I've read and watched about the incel community and what creates these mass shooters, like, I'm not even saying that from like a point of sympathy for these people, as if I understand them and it justifies their actions. It absolutely still doesn't. But there's you
can't fix the problem if you don't know what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it comes back to those kind of far left sentiments of big government, and I want the government to help me and solve all my problems. So instead of looking into the individual and then above the individual is the family. So
yeah, well, you broke the family
unit. Like, how was your kid that broken? You don't know he's that broken. How do you know that how could your child have done all this under your roof?
Made the bombs in his room. He's got a bunch of bombs, and you never knew it.
How out of touch could you possibly be? Like the Columbine parents.
Exactly.
Like how out of touch could you possibly be where you didn't know that your kid felt this way? That like
in some kind of way,
no friends and doesn't feel like he's accepted anywhere, and like, geez, like, and that was probably present even before age 12, 13. It's like, get this kid in therapy, get this kid professional help.
Something.
I mean, how out of touch could you possibly be? Or maybe just scared to confront your kids about hard issues because you don't want that confrontation within the family. I mean, but
we used to have that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know when I was younger, and again, I'm 50, so we're talking 4 decades of time. A lot of things changed, but I know when it was, I remember I got in trouble in school when I was a young kid, like in public school. My dad smacked me. He got me from the school, took me home, was giving me a bunch of harsh words, and he smacked me. Mm-hmm. And I cried. Now, mind you, I'm not talking about child abuse. We all understand there is a difference.
Yeah.
Okay. He gave me a smack.
Yep.
Got my attention. And this is a 6'3", former Marine, okay, from Vietnam vet, has a hook for a hand on one hand. He had a half a leg on the other, okay? He's been noted in his, God bless my father, he died, but Chago was known to take out bars, okay? Like dozen guys versus him, he wins and keeps drinking.
Yeah.
Okay. This man, if he wanted to hurt somebody, he had no problem.
Yeah.
But understanding that, took me home, gave me a smack, and said, "What are you doing? What's wrong with you?" And I remember this very, very clearly. You know, he took out his 007, put it in my little tiny hands. I mean, I was in this elementary school. Put the knife in the hand, said, if it's all that bad, stab me first. I cried. I was in tears.
Yeah.
I wasn't hurt. I was just like emotionally crushed.
Yeah.
That my father is telling me, I'm like, what did I do? You know, and suddenly I have a wake up call.
Yep.
And maybe that's that moment, looking at it nowadays, maybe it's that moment, that confrontation, that directness, and that clarity that's missing, that these kids are missing, that's turning the kid from, oh, I'm going to go out and shoot someone, to, oh my God, what am I doing? Let me stop for a second and catch myself.
Yeah.
Maybe that makes a difference. I know I'm 50 and I still remember that moment, and I happened to be about 8 at the time.
Yep.
You know, and it made a point. You know, maybe that's the difference. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. And it's obviously you can't stop them all. You can't stop
No.
anything like that. And, you know, I'm kind of, I guess, talking more about when I'm saying mass shootings, I'm looking more at the school shootings.
That's a subset. That's actually considered a subset of mass shootings.
Like, we had one of the biggest ones, probably top 10, 15 biggest ones right in Binghamton with the Civic Center. I mean, that was just
well, that was a mass shooting.
Yeah.
And that
shooting.
was,
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's a guy who's, you know, disgruntled and, you know, had some, you know, incorrect perceptions of persecution that he's going to take out, probably dealing with some mental illness, like, sure, whatever. You know, those ones are tricky. It's like, how can you stop that? You know, there wasn't as many warning signs. I mean, there were some crazy angry letters, things like that,
but nothing that would make you say.
I don't think you can stop those things. I think you can.
Well, there's always going to be some element of it. You can stop those
things if you arm more citizens.
Well, that's a great way to help.
That's really, because you can't stop the shooting from taking place, but you can
minimize it.
You can minimize it with armed citizens. Yeah. That's, I mean, right there. That's
I agree. We can minimize it, and I think that is a good solution. But you can never, and I think, and that's one of the problems, is the illusion that we can stop this. No, you can't.
Yeah.
You know, again, evil people will find a way. Crazy people will find a way. We can't eliminate it.
Yeah.
We can minimize it. We can help a lot more people than we're helping right now if we actually pay attention to why. God, be nice. Be nice. Somebody caught his attention. He surprised me. He was sleeping, and then suddenly he got, Con, stop. Most likely, folks, it's a cat. 9 out of 10. Con, stop. So that kind of threw us off.
Yeah.
But I think that's, and I thank you, because that gives a very interesting insight to it. It changes the way we're looking at it. And I don't think a lot of people look at it that way.
Yeah, again, like people love looking at issues like super black and white, super.
It's never that way.
It's either guns or it's not guns, and
that's
there's so much more to it. There's so much more to it. It's guns in the hands of the wrong people.
Yeah,
that's a big part of it for sure. That's what's like. How do you keep those guns out of those people's hands?
You really can't.
You can't do it entirely.
No,
and I think
guns are a reality of the world.
Making the magazine smaller. You know, it's like these are ways I think politicians use these kind of things to appear as if they're trying to make change, appear as if they're
it's stupid and a lie.
And it's to get people who are scared and terrified to vote for them. Like, look at all the changes we're going to enact. We're going to
which isn't going to make anyone safer.
It has to be this long now, and you can't have a pistol grip on an assault rifle. Like
all cosmetics, nothing that actually changes or makes anyone. And I've done hundreds of hours of stories and research. And written about this, it doesn't make people safer. Look at the real numbers. Because there are statistics on this. It isn't making anyone safer. Yeah. The same amount, if not a little bit more, of the murders are happening, even as they're saying, well, this is going to make everyone safe. And The facts are, no, you're not.
Yep.
Every single time. And it's sad. It's really sad. We've been talking for a while. We've covered a lot of subjects here. I always like to make sure, though, because we're just going to be wrapping up. We've done about an hour and a half, believe it or not.
Yeah, wow.
It goes by fast.
Yeah, man, that really does. That's cool.
Yeah. But that's a great conversation. See, it's because we're having, and I like when I can do this with people of any political belief. When we're just talking, we can make sure that if I've missed something you want to say or mention that we haven't touched on, or that you want to just get out there. Remember that.
Yeah.
Like going back to Keapernick. Here's that moment. People don't get that moment. Well, I always like to make sure you get that moment that, if there's anything that you want to bring up, knock it out.
Yeah. I think we covered a lot of stuff. Absolutely. Great discussion for sure.
Definitely.
I would just, I would end on, I'm a big believer in civil liberties and big believer in small government. And that's kind of everything I try to tie into. I try to stay ideologically consistent around those thoughts. And I think the biggest mistake people make right now with the politicians they elect is trying to find people who are going to protect them.
Yeah.
Government can only protect you so much. I think they want the government to protect them in a way that goes beyond where they can protect them, where they could protect themselves. They want the big government to come in and pay for my health care, take all my guns away, usher in utopia. I think it's a slippery slope that I see a lot of us go down right now. The government's, and we've talked about this. Yeah. Sole roles to protect you when you cannot protect yourself.
That's right. I was waiting. I was going to say. Yeah. That's exactly, my saying is.
And that's a big part of it. And I think a lot of people think it should do a lot more than that. And I think it's a slippery slope when you make the government that powerful. That kind of power, absolute power, corrupts absolutely. Every single time, always been true, time and time again. Government, and I truly believe, government should only do what we can't do for ourselves, and it should always be very little, very little, and it should be kept small and restricted. The restrictions are for, and people always forget this, the restrictions in our Constitution and our amendments, they're for the government, not for us. Yep. And the more we get that, the better off we are, because every example that we bring up, the more there's government involvement, the worse this situation always winds up being. Yeah. It's always true. Certainly. But Dom, I enjoyed this. This has been fun. You are, of course, always welcome to come back onto the show or call in or leave any comments. I hope people who are listening to this, obviously, if you want to be on the show, let me know. Or you can, or if you have any comments about this, please, you can do it on Twitter at MVConsult. You can reach us on my email, which is info@vassconsult.com. You can reach out on Facebook, which is the Voss Political Commentary page, and speak at us on there. Or you can go to the No Soundbites Allowed podcast where you're hearing this, and you'll see some of the sources of some of the things we've been talking about, and leave comments there, and leave them for me or Dom, and we can respond back that way. And interaction is always important. But with that, I want to thank everybody. We've had a great episode, and I'm looking forward to the next one. And we'll be talking to you again very, very soon. All right. Thanks a lot. You're welcome.